You want to help me with mess around. Remember, 10, 12 minutes. You have a partner. Everybody got a partner? Come on, ready? Come on. The sentence that you are going to examine. We can never know ultimate truth. Remember, no agreement, disagreement. Examine the sentence. Assumptions, meanings. All right, 10, 12 minutes. Now there are four. There are another two somewhere up here. for me?
We're staying in 4-1.
Now, still in your same group now of 4, you are going to examine the statement, wisdom is gained only through experience.
We're going to go through the words.
Wisdom is a bit lower level. Wisdom is higher than others.
The first thing I'm going to ask you is to remember the group of 4 that you were in. Can you remember the group of 4? Because you will be in that same group of 4 for an experience this afternoon. But I'll just give you a little warning. 3 of the groups of 4 will be divided up so that there will be 10 groups with 5, and but 2 of those groups will have to have 6. I think it works out that way. My mathematics is more or less accurate. So we will end up with 10 groups this afternoon. But remember, the basic group that you're with is the group of 4. Now, did you find it difficult to stay away from agreeing or disagreeing?
Yes.
Isn't that the immediate thing that we want to do? Isn't it? It's interesting. Watch the mind. Watch the mind at work. Almost immediate. You want to agree or disagree. So, I said not to worry about agreeing or disagreeing, but to examine the question. And the first one,
You want me to turn?
we can never know ultimate truth. Where did you, well, let me ask you this. Was it easier in dialogue 1-to-1? Or what happened when there were 4 of you? Better when there were 4? You all felt...
We expanded. We expanded when there
You
were 4.
expanded when there was 4.
The problem was the 2 statements. The first one was the most difficult, and the second one was closer to home.
Ah, the first one, how many of you found the first statement more difficult? We can never know ultimate truth.
We thought of the same.
Was that really difficult to do? When it became 4, were there new ideas?
Yes.
So that it expanded its meaning then. Interesting. What happens when we... Did you find it easy to listen to each other?
Yes.
Or did you all want to... Vlad, did you want to jump in constantly with your ideas? around and look at this first one again, if we can. Where did you begin when you examined that question?
The first never.
Interesting. You began with never?
Yes.
What about we?
Yes. We began with
How many of you began with we? Yeah. Because everything depends on what you mean by we, doesn't it?
Yep.
It really is dependent on that.
we. All the way.
Now, I've used the word can for a reason, which you'll have revealed to you tomorrow morning. So I'm not going to go into it now. But the word can is a very interesting word. We'll look at it tomorrow morning when we talk about the evolution of Theosophy. Or is Theosophy an evolutive system or is it a static system? Hmm? You've already got your mind made up, right? What is it?
Either.
Ever. Good. Anyway, we'll look at that. How many of you started with this never?
And we
Interesting.
came to it.
You started with never. What about no? How many got stopped on the word no?
Well, you told us all about that yesterday.
So you already knew all about it.
We considered all the words.
You
Yes.
considered all of them.
Yes, we
In
did.
order?
Yes.
In order?
Yes, we did. We did.
We started with we and we went right through the
Went right through
We
them.
wanted to find common ground that we were
So you tried to find a common ground.
talking about the thing we were talking
Did the
about.
word ultimate bother any of you?
Yes.
Ultimate.
Yes.
That was the most important word
Yeah.
you found.
That's what we said. Yeah.
Interesting. Anyone get bothered by truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Pilate's famous question, what is truth?
Yeah.
Yes. Very interesting. So, any comments about your experience in looking at this? Sorry, I'm sorry.
There's a pleasure derived in discovering something new.
Still can't quite hear.
pleasure from discovering something new.
Discovering something new. Did you enjoy the experience?
We can have a conclusion.
We discovered with each sentence that we found it easier to draw something.
To draw something?
Yes.
That's interesting, because that's what you're going to do this afternoon.
Oh.
Maybe. No, you're not going to draw things. You look at things. Anyway. Yes. Anyone else have anything?
We had a lot of discussion about what truth is.
What truth is,
And
yes.
the fact that it can be different things to different people.
Mhm.
And so where does ultimate truth come? And does ultimate truth and ultimate, or does it keep evolving?
Ah, yes. It can there ever be ultimate?
Yes, penultimate.
So,
Well, that would not be ultimate though.
But doesn't that statement claim to be an ultimate truth?
hmm?
Doesn't that statement claim to be an ultimate truth?
We're into general semantics here. You went into, yes. B, how did you come out with general semantics in this?
Well, never, general semantics,
The never really is the,
they would say, they would put it somewhere that it may be possible that we may not be able to discover the ultimate truth.
yes.
And all misstatement.
Mhm. But this cut it off, never. Very interesting.
So they avoid the issue.
Continue the dialogue.
And there was some discussion in our group about the negativity of that statement.
Yeah, so that,
Whether it was, in fact, so therefore we didn't really want to go into it too much.
Mhm.
Or whether it had a negative element which allowed us to think positively about where it might take us.
Mhm.
So we were
Interesting
really-
whether the negative aspect was really Yes. Hmm?
Yes.
I thought that the word never was very dogmatic
Mhm.
and would stop people from trying to find it.
So this becomes a dogmatic statement.
So if it was, you were making the idea of what it said to the general public, it would put them right off.
It would put them off.
Pass it up.
Well, we thought that we can never know in the logical mind. That's the truth of logical mind. Beyond that.
We make a distinction at the levels of knowing,
This led to levels of knowing,
Yeah.
the levels of consciousness.
levels of consciousness. So it came back to the we.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That way we got over the negative element of it.
You got over that negative element, yes.
I found the question strangely similar
Yes?
to do with experiencing, evolving, moving, and then something beyond time in each case. But wisdom and ultimate truth are very similar.
Our wisdom and ultimate truth. Did you-
Oh, that's another one to put on the
That's a whole another one. We reckon
Turn
that's
it
a whole
around
another one.
again. Wisdom is gained only through experience. Where did you begin on this as 4?
Wisdom.
What's experience?
What is experience? How many of you began with looking at experience?
We started with wisdom.
Yes, we didn't like only.
No, we didn't.
What word stood out that you immediately resisted?
Only.
Only. Only.
That's it.
And immediately there comes a resistance. It's amazing. Like the resistance to the word never.
Same.
The same kind of resistance.
So is it conditioning or knowing?
Yes?
Yeah.
This is
Wait.
it. It's very interesting. The word, we look at a sentence, something leaps out at us that we resist. And we spend a lot of time looking at that, resisting it, without looking at why did we resist it? Why do we resist the word only?
Too dogmatic.
It's a tool, but why do we resist?
It's because it's not a relative term, it's an absolute.
We don't like absolute terms, is that it?
That's it.
Never, only, these things. We resist. Very
That's
interesting.
why we resist the absolute.
There's also presumptions that come up. The moment I saw wisdom, mine was heart wisdom. And I wasn't really open to any other form of wisdom
Any other
until I
form
had
of-
to ask questions and listen.
This is interesting. Yes. How many began with the word wisdom? We're going to look a bit at that tomorrow morning too, incidentally. I'm trying to key you up. I hope you'll be here tomorrow morning. Maybe everybody will have left by that time. Vern?
I noted that experience, that even if wisdom comes through intuition, that in itself is an experience too.
Very interesting.
We I had the feeling that wisdom could come through internally, and is that experience?
Is that
Well,
experience?
what's
So
the-
everything
what's the
depended on
parameters?
what you meant by
What are
experience.
the parameters of the word experience?
Yes.
And whose experience?
Hmm?
Whose experience?
Whose experience?
We spent a while on passive experience and active.
Passive and active experience. That's interesting.
We looked at whether we could learn through your experience.
I wanted to know whether a dream is an experience and whether what you learn, you wake up in the morning, you know something, you've asked your question before you go to sleep at night, in the morning you wake up and you know it. Is that experience?
Yeah.
So we want to define out of what experience.
You see, I'm not going to define it for you.
Very, George?
No, I'm asking you to examine these, you see, to examine them.
Yeah, we were examining the point that experience really, or could be considered as repetition.
As repetition?
Yes, that we're constantly cycling around, repeating things, and that gives, from one point of view, you could say that the experience is the constant repeating of situations or things we like or things we don't like, and then the categorizing, but it's the repetition that's a very important factor of both experience and evolution.
Now let me ask you finally then, because the statements in one sense are irrelevant to the experience, can I put it that way? These are just two positive statements. They're not neither right or wrong, neither true nor false. That's not the point. As I said, agreement or disagreement was irrelevant. I don't care whether you agree or don't agree. The point was to examine them. And what are our assumptions? Now, did you discover in that examination a kind of knowing that you didn't know you knew? Through dialogue. This is really knowing through dialogue. Did you discover in the examination of the two statements something new that you hadn't thought of before?
What we couldn't have had without the other three people in the group. That was a kind of a learning experience that we couldn't have solo.
Yes.
Well, that's
If I'd asked each of you to examine the statements alone, completely alone,
no guest house or whatever the word.
you would have gone around in a kind of squirrel cage, put it that way. But with the others, this is where again and again communication is communion. It is with another or others. And so everything in the universe is in exchange. Yes, Rose?
There's an immense power that is possible in the group.
Yes.
And with others giving their ideas, something comes up.
Something
that you
comes up.
wouldn't
Yes.
come up with yourself.
Did you find yourself looking at ideas, looking at ways of experiencing the words or knowing the words that hadn't been there before?
Well, the words become more complex.
It becomes more complex.
And as you were talking about language and semantics, the different senses of each person
Yes.
who talks about the word wisdom,
Yes.
it becomes so multi-layered.
So did you have to pause and ask, what did you mean by that? So that we really, in dialogue, begin to try to understand what the other person is saying, what the other person is meaning. And think how often we jump in and say, well, that person said so-and-so, such and such. And perhaps that individual didn't mean it at all. How often that happens. And then misunderstandings get multiplied. Isn't this what often happens in our lodges? And misunderstanding builds on misunderstanding because we haven't paused to find out, what did you really say? We could have done some other, if there are time, some other exercises in which I think you, Clive, were telling me about the group, or somebody was, no, it was, you told me about it. Yes, where, and this is a very good exercise in a lodge, I might say. We've done it many times. And you're sitting in a circle, and when someone speaks, before someone else speaks, the person who is about to speak must say, I understood you to say, and repeat in your own words what you think you heard. It's a very good exercise.
Paying attention to what the other was saying.
Yes. Do we really pay attention to what another person is saying? Do we listen to each other?
of this statement with Krishnamurti?
Yes, of course I could have. Of course I could have.
You could have straightened him out.
Yes, I do think I could have.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
Very much so.
Good.
Yes, both statements I could have dialogued
Yeah,
with
this
Kay.
one, yeah.
But this one, yes. Very much so, and it would have been very interesting.
Very interesting, very interesting.
You know, I knew Kay,
Yeah.
of course, not as closely as many of his friends did, but I frequently was invited to lunch with him. And, it was usually just a small group, 6, 8, sometimes 10 people. And one of the richest ones was one Easter Sunday, a week or so before I'd had a telephone call. This was in Ojai, after I was back in Ojai, from Krishnamurti Foundation. They said, Kay would like you to come to lunch on Sunday. David Bohm will be there. Well, of course, I went, obviously. It was a wonderful opportunity. And to hear the two of them at lunch, you know, to sit there. There were about, I think there were 6 or 8 of us, you know, at the luncheon table. And Kay always told you where to sit. And usually when I was invited to lunch, he had me sit next to him. On the other side was David Bohm. And, you know, very interesting because he was relaxed, of course, very relaxed, as he always was at a luncheon. Had many luncheons with him in Adyar and some in Ojai. And David would ask a question, and Kay would say, yes, let's look at that. Let's look at that. Why are you saying that, David? Why are you saying it? These were not the dialogues that were taped. These were luncheon discussions. And he would say, oh, now wait a moment, David. You used that word. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What do you think you're talking about? And then in between, he'd say, Joy, you're not eating enough or something. He was a perfect host. Kay was a perfect host, I can tell you that. He was aware of what everybody was eating in a sense. And if their plate was empty, you know, have some more and so on. And at the end of the luncheon, he gets up, and he picks up the plates, and he goes out to the kitchen and begins washing dishes. You know, sort of, that was Kay. But yes, I could have dialogued that. And I frequently said to him, you know, I would have said, Kay, what do you think wisdom really is? What is wisdom? And he would always say, Joy, you better find out yourself. I say, well, I think you're a very wise man, Kay. But why do you say that? I have no wisdom. I'm searching. And I said, but that to me is wisdom. Perhaps. Anyway, yes, glad I could have dialogue.
Yeah, lovely.
That. Wonderful. He was a wonderful person. That's when I really knew him, not in his talks, you know. Of course, I went to many of his talks, but it was in those wonderful times of luncheon. And I was frequently invited in Adyar to be an observer. He would have these dialogues with these high-powered people, and many of us were invited. There were always a group of us sitting around. Radha, of course, was one, and I was frequently invited, if I were there, to be an observer. Not to participate, but just to be an observer. Wonderful to be an observer as he would probe and inquire. What are the assumptions we make? Not agreeing, disagreeing, but look at it, probe it. So that's what I hope I've been able to stimulate a little bit for you, and that you've enjoyed the experience this morning. And so remember the group that you were in, and there's 3 groups that are going to get split up, but that's all right. I'm not going to tell you which ones. We'll work that out this afternoon. So have a nice lunch, and we reconvene at 1:30. 1:30.